shower.
To get peace, I need
Deeply unseen.
Juan Sebastian. Drops below him.
Airport.
The night was cold and the rain hammered the concrete of an anonymous downtown building, where a lone security guard made his rounds. He descended into the basement, flashlight trembling in his hand, when a figure emerged from the shadows. The man claimed to be a repair technician, insisting he was there to check the wiring. The guard, trained to question every intrusion, asked for a work order. The repairman's eyes narrowed. Instead of producing a document, he drew a knife and plunged it into the guard's chest. The guard slumped to the floor, his badge clattering against the tile, and the darkness swallowed his scream. Upstairs, a routine meeting was drawing to a close. Employees filed out of the conference room, their conversations a low hum, and relaxed into the stainless steel elevator that would carry them to the parking garage. Unseen, someone in the building pressed a hidden button. The steel cables that tethered the lift with a metallic sigh loosened, and the car shuddered as the tension in the ropes disappeared. The elevator began a slow, terrifying descent, each floor it passed marked by an echoing clang that reverberated through the shafts. Within minutes, the police arrived, sirens cutting through the rain. Lieutenant Mack, a seasoned LAPD officer with a scar running down his right cheek, stepped out of his cruiser and surveyed the scene. He descended the stairwell to the elevator lobby where a frantic crowd had gathered. "We have a bomb," he announced, his voice flat, "and 13 people are trapped below the 30th floor. The bomber is demanding $3.7 million. If we don't deliver, he'll destroy the emergency brakes and the car will freefall. We have 23 minutes before the timer runs out." The building's interior was a maze of service tunnels and access panels. The only way to reach the shaft without triggering the bomb was through a maintenance hatch on the 32nd floor. 2 officers volunteered. Officer Jack Torres, a calm, methodical cop with a reputation for thinking several steps ahead, and Detective Harry Malloy, a gritty veteran whose instincts had saved lives in countless hostage situations. They raced up the stairwell, their boots clacking against the concrete, and emerged onto the dimly lit hallway of the 32nd floor. Jack and Harry slipped through the narrow service door, the stale air of the utility corridor filling their lungs. They found the access panel, a rusted steel door bolted to the wall, just as the clock on their wrist radios ticked down. With practiced efficiency, Jack pried it open, exposing a tangled web of wires and a thin metal conduit that led directly into the elevator shaft. He lowered a flashlight, the beam dancing over the slick metal of the car as it hovered 3 floors above, the lobby. Inside the cab, the passengers huddled together, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion. "What's going on?" a woman whispered, clutching her child's hand. Jack spoke into his radio, his tone reassuring. "LAPD, we're with you. It's a malfunction. Stay calm. We'll get you out." Unbeknownst to them, Howard, the man behind the detonator, sat in a cramped office overlooking the service stairs, his ear to a covert receiver that fed him every word exchanged between the police and the trapped civilians. The conversation between Jack and Harry turned uneasy as the minutes slipped away. "What would you do if a gunman took a hostage on a runway and you were 100 feet away?" Harry asked, testing his partner's resolve. "If it meant stopping a disaster, I'd eliminate the hostage," Jack answered without flinching. The words hung in the air, a cold reminder of the razor-thin line between duty and morality. Harry's eyes narrowed. He could see the storm brewing behind Jack's measured calm. Realizing that the bomber's leverage was the passengers themselves, Jack devised a dangerous gambit. He attached a heavy steel cable to a robust hook screwed to the elevator's underside, then used a portable winch to suspend himself upside down from the shaft ceiling. From his precarious perch, he eased the hook onto the car's roof, hoping to create a secondary support that would prevent the elevator from falling when the emergency brakes were destroyed. Howard, listening intently, pressed the detonator. The emergency brakes detonated with a deafening pop, and the car lurched downward, the passengers slamming against the walls in a chorus of panic. The cable held, just barely, stopping the car just before it hit the shaft floor. The sudden halt sent a jolt through the metal frame, and Jack's heart pounded as he felt the strain on his own body. He seized the moment, dropping a compact drill through the access panel and carving a passage into the elevator's interior. Sweat slicked his palms as he reached out to the trembling occupants, pulling one by one through the gaping hole. A young mother clutched her infant, her eyes wide with terror, yet Jack's steady voice coaxed her into the narrow opening. The process was slow and excruciating. Each second pulsed with the threat of another explosion, each rescued passenger a small victory against the unseen foe. As the last of the victims slipped into the shaft, Jack's eyes darted to the far wall, where a faint silhouette moved. The realization hit him. Howard was not down in the basement. He was perched high above, using the freight elevators as a hidden command center. Jack and Harry pressed onward, their footsteps echoing in the empty service tunnel. Suddenly, a barrage of gunfire erupted from the darkness. Bullets ricocheted off steel, forcing the two officers to dive behind a rusted pipe. Howard's voice crackled through a speaker, gloating, "You think you can save them? They're mine now." In a frantic exchange, Howard forced his way into the main elevator shaft, cornering Jack and Harry with the gun trained on them. He held Detective Harry at gunpoint, his finger trembling on the trigger. "One wrong move and the whole car goes up in a ball of fire," Howard hissed. Jack, desperate to end the standoff, lunged forward. In the chaotic scramble, his weapon discharged accidentally, a warning shot that grazed Harry's calf. The pistol's recoil sent Howard stumbling backward, disorienting him enough for Jack to wrestle the gun away. The elevator's cables groaned under the sudden shift in tension. Howard, realizing his control was slipping, lunged toward the detonator, his eyes wild with desperation. In the ensuing struggle, a second explosive device, smaller but no less lethal, detonated, sending a shockwave through the shaft. Steel buckled, the elevator car shuddered, then halted, its motion arrested by the combined weight of debris and the broken cables. When the dust settled, Lieutenant Mack arrived on the scene, his badge glinting under the flickering fluorescent lights. He ordered immediate medical assistance for the injured, and the remaining officers secured the area. The 13 passengers, shaken but alive, were escorted out of the building, on stretchers and wheelchairs. The city's news crews flooded the street, their cameras capturing the exhausted faces of Jack, Harry, and Mac as they stood amid the wreckage. In the days that followed, a formal ceremony was held in the precinct's grand hall. The mayor, flanked by city council members, presented Jack and Harry with medals of valor, the polished bronze gleaming against their uniforms. The crowd erupted in applause, the sound echoing off marble columns as the officers stood stoic, their eyes briefly meeting across the room. A silent acknowledgement of the cost they had paid. Howard was reported dead, his body allegedly discovered among the twisted metal of the elevator shaft, a victim of his own device. Yet, as the ceremony was broadcast live, a grainy image flickered on a television screen in a nearby bar. Howard, alive, smirking into the camera, his hand giving a mocking salute. The officers tried to shake off the feeling that the battle was not truly over. Harry returned home to Santa Monica, slipping into his routine with an uneasy mind. Jack, meanwhile, found brief solace in a downtown cafe, sipping bitter coffee and nibbling on a warm muffin while chatting with a friend who drove a city bus. Their conversation drifted complacently until a sharp, high-pitched scream shattered the calm. The bus outside the cafe erupted in a fireball, flames licking the night, sky as metal twisted and shattered. Jack leapt from his seat, heart hammering, and raced toward the carnage. Amid the chaos, a payphone on the curb rang, its receiver vibrating against the cracked glass. Jack snatched it up, and a familiar, cold voice filled his ear. "Jack, you've been a good sport. Howard crooned, the background hiss of a detonator audible. 2 years of work on that elevator, and you think you've won? I'm just getting started. You know the price, $3.7 million. If you want that bus to stay whole, you'll have to play my game. Howard described a new trap. The bus was rigged with a bomb that would detonate if its speed fell below 50 miles per hour. The device would arm the moment the engine reached that threshold and would explode the instant the driver slowed for any reason. No passengers may leave, no stops. The money must be in my hands by 11 o'clock. Failure is not an option, he snarled. Jack's mind raced. He remembered the city's relentless traffic, the endless stops at traffic lights, the buzzing of crosswalks, each a potential death sentence. He called in his team, relaying Howard's demands. The LAPD mobilized, surrounding the downtown streets with officers on motorcycles and in unmarked cars. A convoy of armored vehicles formed a perimeter around the bus route, ensuring that no civilian could wander into the E or danger zone. The bus, a bright yellow city transit, rolled out from the depot, its doors sliding shut with a pneumatic sigh. Inside, a handful of commuters glanced at each other, unaware of the invisible clock ticking beneath the seats. A woman named Annie, a schoolteacher heading downtown from Venice, clutched her bag tighter as the bus peeled away from the curb. Jack, now in an unmarked cruiser, followed at a safe distance, his eyes never leaving the rear window where the bus's taillights speckled the night like a string of fireflies. Traffic snarled ahead, a sea of red brake lights. The bus driver, a seasoned veteran named Luis, maintained a steady speed, his foot never easing off the accelerator. The city's rhythm forced him to slow at each light, each intersection presenting a deadly dilemma. Jack's heart pounded with each passing second as he frantically coordinated with the traffic control center, attempting to clear a path that would keep the bus above the lethal threshold. He instructed the police to create a rolling green wave, timing the traffic signal so the bus could glide through the downtown grid without interruption. Despite the heavy police presence, a sudden accident ahead forced a chain reaction of braking. The bus's speed dropped to 49 miles per hour. A high-pitched whine rose from beneath the chassis, the bomb's arming mechanism signaling its activation. A red warning light flared on the dashboard, the driver's eyes widening in terror. In a split-second decision, Jack swerved his cruiser into the oncoming lane, slamming the horn and shouting through his megaphone, Pull over now!" The bus driver, instincts overriding fear, caught the warning, and with a desperate yank on the steering wheel, veered sharply onto a narrow side street that led to an abandoned warehouse district. The bus lurched across cracked asphalt, the tires screeching as they dug into gravel. The front doors swung open, the emergency brakes screeching as they engaged. Inside, passengers clutched their seats, a collective gasp escaping their throats as the bus shuddered to a halt. Howard's voice crackled again. "You think you're clever, Jack? You're still playing my game." The bomb's timer ticked down, the last seconds marked by a steady, ominous beep that reverberated in the cramped cabin. Jack and his team stormed the warehouse, their weapons trained on the bus. They breached the rear door with a battering ram, the metal yielding under the impact. The interior was dim, illuminated only by the flickering emergency lights of the bus. Howard stood at the driver's seat, a smirk crawling across his face, a remote control clutched in his hand. He raised it, a glint of circuitry catching the weak light. 3 minutes, he hissed, or the whole block goes up in flames. In those final minutes, Jack's training took over. He lunged forward, knocking the remote from Howard's grasp, the device clattering across the floor. A struggle ensued, bodies colliding, metal ringing against metal. With a final surge of strength, Jack wrested the remote, slamming it onto the bus floor. The red LED stopped flashing. The beeping ceased. Howard, breathless and shaken, was handcuffed by 2 officers as the bomb squad moved in, securing the device for safe removal. The aftermath was a blur of flashing lights, medical personnel tending to the shaken passengers, and news crews recording the heroics for the evening broadcast. Jack, his uniform stained with dust and sweat, stood apart, eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting another threat to emerge from the shadows. The city's streets, still slick with rain, reflected the neon signs of downtown, creating an eerie, luminous tapestry under which the drama had unfolded. In the weeks that followed, the LAPD conducted a thorough debrief, piecing together the timeline of Howard's actions and the vulnerabilities that had allowed him to orchestrate two separate terror plots within days. The case spurred changes in how the department handled bomb threats, introducing new protocols for rapid evacuation and integrating advanced surveillance in service shafts. Jack and Harry were assigned to a joint task force aimed at tracking domestic explosives threats, their experience on the elevator and bus, incidents becoming case studies for training new recruits. And yet, as the city settled back into its rhythm, a faint echo lingered in the corners of the precinct, a reminder that the line between order and chaos could be crossed in an instant, and that vigilance was the only armor professionals could truly rely upon. The memory of Howard's smiling face on a television screen, his applause distorted by static, remained a haunting image in the minds of the officers. It served as both a warning and a motivator. The fight against those who would weaponize everyday infrastructure would never truly end, and the duty to protect would forever demand sacrifice, resolve, and an unyielding belief that, even in the darkest moments, reason and courage could prevail. Jack lunged forward, his voice cracking as he shouted for the driver to pull the bus over. "Stop! I'm with the LAPD!" His words were swallowed by the roar of the engine, and the vehicle surged ahead, its speed climbing past 50 miles per hour. The ticking of the bomb hidden among the seats was set to ignite any moment the bus fell below that threshold. Beside him, the city's streets blurred into a smear of neon and concrete. Jack's mind raced as fast as the wheels, trying to form a plan that would keep the bus moving fast enough to keep the device dormant, while he searched for a way to warn the passengers. He caught the eye of a nervous teenager in the back, then of a businessman clutching his briefcase, each face a reminder of the lives hanging in the balance. Desperation drove Jack to a rash decision. Spotting a sedan idling at a red light a few blocks ahead, he sprinted to the driver's side, flung the door open, and wrested the keys from the bewildered motorist. "Give me the car," he barked, shoving the stranger away. The driver, a middle-aged man with a salt and pepper beard, staggered back, eyes wide, as Jack slammed the vehicle into gear and tore after the bus. The chase was a blur of asphalt and honking horns. The bus roared past storefronts, its brakes squealing as it fought the weight of over 100 terrified passengers. Inside, the timer on the bomber's golden wristwatch ticked down, its 3 triggers humming with a volatile mix of C4 that would turn the vehicle into a fireball if the speed slipped. Annie, the bus driver, gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles. She had never been forced to treat her vehicle as a weapon, and the sheer absurdity of the situation did not diminish the terror. "We have to stay above 50, Jack shouted through the intercom, his voice cracking but clear. "If we dip, the bomb blows." The passengers stared, bewildered, some clutching their children, others whispering prayers. A sudden movement in the aisle drew Jack's eye. A man in a stained sweatshirt drew a handgun, his finger trembling on the trigger. Instinctively, Jack lunged, his own gun popping up in defense. The 2 men faced each other, guns pointed, breaths ragged. After a heart-stopping second, Jack lowered his weapon, his eyes flicking to the nervous faces around them. "Put it down," he commanded, voice low but firm. The man's hands shook, but the tension in the bus did not lessen. Just as the armed passenger seemed to calm, Ortiz, a burly, silver-haired regular who'd taken a few rides a week, leapt forward, trying to wrestle the gun away. In the scramble, the trigger clicked. A spray of lead struck the driver's left arm, sending a spray of blood across the dashboard. The driver gasped, his vision swimming, and his hand slipped from the wheel. For a terrifying second, the bus wavered, its speed threatening to dip. Jack shouted over the chaos, "There's a bomb on this bus! Stay above 50 or it's over." Annie, eyes narrowed with resolve, fought the wheel back into control, coaxing the massive vehicle around a hairpin turn that seemed to defy physics. The convoy of police helicopters circling overhead crackled with static, their spotlights sweeping the night like searching eyes. Below them, a television set in. A cramped living room flickered. Howard, a lanky man with a permanent grin plastered across his face, watched the unfolding drama with a mix of fascination and amusement. He turned the volume up, his mind half-focused on the NFL game playing on the other channel. "This is the stuff," he muttered, munching on a bag of chips, enthralled by the real-life action playing out on the screen. Jack's phone buzzed. It was Harry, the seasoned LAPD bomb squad detective stationed at headquarters. Jack, listen to me, Harry said, voice tight with urgency. The device contains a massive amount of C4, 3 independent triggers, and a timer synced to a gold wristwatch. If we drop below 50, any one of those triggers will set it off. He paused, listening to the roar of the bus. You need to keep the speed constant. We're navigating the city grid now, and you're in a high-risk zone. Jack nodded, even though Harry could not see him. We're crashing through everything. Signs, parked cars, a billboard. Annie's doing her best to hold steady. He glanced at the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of Mac, the tactical specialist who had boarded a chopper minutes earlier and was now relaying coordinates through an earpiece. Mac, we need a clear path to the nearest police unit. The bomber's design changes every time. He knows our countermeasures. Mac's voice crackled, calm and precise. Jack, I'm following you. Take the next ramp, then cut left onto the 5th. I'll guide you past the construction site. There's a 50-foot gap in the freeway, an unfinished interchange. If you keep the speed, you'll make the jump. Jack's knuckles whitened. Everyone, brace up. When we hit the gap, keep your heads down. The bus surged forward, engines straining as the cityscape raced past. Inside, passengers clutched each other, some sobbing, others shouting for someone to do something. Among them, Helen, a petite woman clutching a tote bag, lunged toward the front door, her eyes wild with desperation. She wanted to leap out, believing the crash would free her from the ticking death machine. At the front, Howard's helicopter hovered, a massive rotor blade beating the air. The pilot, following Howard's frantic commands, fired a warning flare that illuminated the bus's front grille. A deafening explosion ripped through the bus's nose as the flare hit the metal, sending a spray of shrapnel outward. Helen's body toppled onto the floor and she vanished under the twisted metal, her scream swallowed by the roar. The passengers erupted into panic. Voices clashed, accusations flew, and the fragile order that Jack had tried to maintain shattered. Annie, her face streaked with sweat, kept her eyes on the road. Jack moved to her side, gripping her shoulder. You did everything you could. He whispered, his tone gentle amidst the chaos. Don't blame yourself. If Helen had escaped, Howard would have blown us all up anyway. Annie's eyes filled with tears, a mixture of relief and survivor's guilt. I didn't want to die, she whispered, voice trembling. I just wanted to get home. Jack squeezed her hand. We're not home yet. We have to finish this. Mac's voice cut through the static. Jack, the gap is right ahead. You're at the brink. Remember, keep above 50. The bus thundered towards the incomplete stretch of the interchange. For a split second, the world seemed to freeze as the front wheels left the pavement, the bus soaring over a yawning void. The occupants felt a gut-dropping sensation as they were suspended in the night, the city lights flashing below like fireflies. Then, with a sickening jolt, the wheels met the other side of the ramp, landing hard but intact. The bus lurched, then steadied, as if grateful to have survived the impossible. A collective exhale rose from the interior. Some passengers clapped, others simply stared at the ceiling in disbelief. Annie, still gripping the wheel, managed a shaky smile. We made it, she said, voice hoarse. We're still alive. Jack turned to her, eyes alight with a mixture of admiration and exhaustion. You drove like a man possessed. Without you, we'd be dead right now. She shook, her head, eyes darting back to the road ahead. Why is he after us? Who's he? Jack swallowed. The bomber. He's not after the city, he's after us. He loves the game, the cat and mouse with the police. If we survive today, there's another game tomorrow. He thrives on chaos. Back at headquarters, Harry was digging through old case files, his mind racing. The bomber's pattern isn't consistent, he told his team. He changes bomb designs, knows each new police tactic. He's a chameleon. He's not a cop. He's a ghost that's been watching us for 10 years. He paused, eyes narrowing as he scanned financial records. Pension funds. Look there. He's probably using them to fund his madness. He might be disabled, but he can still trigger explosives from a distance. Howard, still glued to his TV, held the phone to his ear, an edge of desperation in his tone. Jack, hand over the money. I earned it. I have a medal, a pink slip, and a scar on my hand. I need that money to survive. Jack steadied his breath. Howard, I'm letting you off the bus alone. I'll talk to the authorities face to face. You get the cash, I get the lives. No double cross. Howard hesitated, then consented, his voice low as he warned, "Don't be late." Jack instructed Annie to keep circling the airport runway. Los Angeles International's cargo terminals loomed ahead, their vast expanse offering a temporary sanctuary. Helicopters could not follow the bus that would now be skirting the perimeter, cutting Howard off from live updates. The bus, its engine humming, turned onto the tarmac, the massive wheels kicking up dust as they rolled past idle planes. The runways were bathed in the ghostly blue of early morning, the city's lights flickering like distant stars. Jack climbed out of the bus, his badge flashing in the low light, and walked toward a waiting convoy of unmarked police cars. He approached Howard, who stood on a makeshift platform, a satchel of cash clenched in his fists. The man's eyes flickered with a mixture of fear and greed. "You think you can give me the money and I'll just walk away?" Howard sneered. Jack held out his hand, steady as steel. "I'm offering you a way out. No more blood, no more bombs. That's all I can give you." After a tense, breath-holding pause, Howard shoved the bag toward Jack. "Go, don't come back. I'll be waiting for the next game." Back on the bus, the passengers, still rattled, still alive, cheered as they felt the surge of the engines push them toward the airport's exit. Annie, eyes shining with triumph, navigated the vehicle onto the ramp that led directly into the bustling cargo terminal of LAX. The bus halted at a secure loading dock, where police officers in tactical gear rushed forward, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Jack rejoined the scene minutes later, his badge wet with sweat but his resolve unshaken. He pulled a breath and addressed the crowd. "You're safe. The bomb is still active, but because we never dropped below 50, it never detonated. We bought ourselves time, and we used it." A murmuring wave of relief rippled through the passengers. Some clapped, some hugged strangers, some simply stood still, overwhelmed by the sheer closeness of death and the miracle of survival. The night air grew still, the city's usual hum fading into a soft background hum. Somewhere in a darkened office, a man in a shadowed corner stared at a wall of monitors, his eyes flickering with the reflection of the bus's silhouette. He smiled, a thin, satisfied smile. The game was over for now, but the board was reset, and a new move would soon be made. In the hours that followed, investigators swarmed the scene, searching the bus for the hidden device. The C4 remained inert, its triggers untriggered, a silent testament to the split-second decisions that kept it dormant. Jack, exhausted, stood with Annie as the first light of dawn painted the runway gold. "Thank you," she whispered, eyes wet. "I never thought I'd see a day like this." Jack placed a hand on the steering wheel, feeling its familiar contours. "You drove the impossible, we all did." The sound of distant sirens rose, marking the end of a night that had teetered between catastrophe and redemption. Above them, the sky lightened, promising a new day, a day that would inevitably bring its own challenges, its own games, and its own ticking clocks. The city would wake, unaware that for a brief, breathless moment, a bus had defied death, and a handful of strangers had become the unlikely heroes of a story that would be whispered for years to come. Jack stared at the tablet on Mac's desk, the blinking cursor a silent reminder that time was slipping away. Mac leaned over his shoulder, his voice low and urgent. "We can get the passengers out, but the bus is a ticking time bomb. If you try to move them now, you'll set it off." Jack's gut twisted. Every time the bomber had slipped a step ahead of them, their plans had crumbled. The thin line of fire that had scorched the rear of the vehicle a few hours earlier still glowed, a stark warning that the threat was far from dormant. "Disarm it," Jack muttered, the decision crystallizing in his mind. He could feel the weight of the passengers' eyes on him, their confusion turning into quiet dread as the bus shuddered under the strain of a hidden charge. Beside him, Mac rested a hand on Jack's shoulder. "We won't have long. Give me a few minutes and we'll get you a way out." The words hung in the stale air of the bus's interior, punctuated only by the occasional cough and the rustle of a child's toy that had been forgotten on a seat. Out on the street, Harry's voice crackled through Jack's earpiece, steady despite the chaos. "Jack, I'm with you. I'm feeding you the schematics now. Keep the cable taut." A thin steel line coiled around Jack's waist pulled him beneath the bus as he rolled onto a mechanic's creeper. The metal beast loomed above, its belly a lattice of wires and panels that seemed to pulse with a malevolent life of its own. Jack felt the cold bite of the bus's undercarriage against his cheek as he slipped deeper into the confined space, the cable humming with the strain of his weight. Harry's instructions came in rapid succession, each a lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. Cut the red line first, then the blue. The circuit is collapsible. You can't just bypass it, you have to dismantle it layer by layer. Jack's fingers trembled as he traced the hidden pathways of the bomb, the intricate web of wires reminding him how little he knew about the device's inner workings. The bus groaned above, its suspension protesting the added pressure from beneath. Meanwhile, a frantic team at the precinct pored over surveillance footage. The image of a scarred man flashed on the screen, his left hand missing a fingertip. The name Howard Payne scrolled across the monitor, a former member of the Atlanta Police Department's bomb squad who had retired in 1989 after a botched charge left him with only 9 fingers to hold a gun. The revelation hit the room like a pistol shot. Payne was not just any criminal. He was a master of the very devices the squad was trained to defuse. Back under the bus, the cable that tethered Jack to the life-saving grappling hook snapped with a sickening pop. The sudden loss of tension sent him hurtling, his body slamming against the steel frame. He braced himself as a sharp pain radiated from his side. He had cracked the fuel tank. A hiss of gasoline escaped, licking the metal like a warning. Annie, perched on the front seat, gasped. "Did I run over him?" she shouted, her voice cracking with terror. The passengers turned, eyes flitting between her and the increasingly frantic creak of the bus's floor. Ortiz, a seasoned paramedic who had volunteered to assist, kicked open the floor panel with a crowbar, his muscles straining against the stubborn metal. He pulled the panel aside just enough for Jack's head to emerge. The world flooded, back in fragments. Flashing lights, the smell of diesel, the metallic tang of fear. "Mac, we need to get that fuel leak sealed." "Now," Jack croaked, his voice hoarse from the choke of smoke and effort. Mac scrambled for a fire extinguisher, spraying a cloud of foam over the puncture. The foam sputtered, fighting an uphill battle against the growing pool of fuel that threatened to ignite at any moment. While the ground team wrestled with the bus, Harry's squad stormed Howard Payne's suburban home. The front door gave way under a surge of tactical force, but inside, Payne had anticipated their arrival. He'd rigged a secondary device, a compact, pressure-sensitive bomb concealed within a wooden chest. The moment the team breached the living room, the charger clicked and a muffled explosion erupted, sending shards of plaster into the air. Harry was caught in the blast, his body thrown against a wall, his life ending in a flash of light and a spray of blood. The loss hit the team like an ice storm. The echo of his last command, "Keep moving," reverberated through Jack's mind. Jack's earpiece buzzed, the connection crackling. "Jack, answer," a voice demanded. He recognized the tone immediately, Howard Payne's, a low drawl that dripped with contempt. "Harry's dead, Jack. Your little watch? A retirement gift. I put it on the bomb, thought you'd have a nice little reminder when you tried to take it from me." Payne's laugh was a jagged knife. "If you don't deliver the cash, I'll make sure all of you burn. And as for Annie, she's my wildcat." Jack's eyes darted to Annie's shirt, the University of Arizona emblem emblazoned across her chest. The nickname snapped into place like a puzzle piece. Payne knew she was on the bus, that he could see inside through hidden cameras, that his surveillance had no sound, only a silent, looping replay of the interior. He was watching, waiting, calculating. A heavy silence fell over the bus as Jack whispered to the passengers, "Stay still, look forward, don't move a muscle." He pressed a small recorder against the ceiling, the reed of the mic catching the low hum of the air conditioner and the occasional creak of the suspension. Mac, hidden behind a folding table, pressed a button on his portable transmitter. The recorded feed, muted, a grainy loop of the bus's interior, was broadcast to every television in the city. Payne's eyes flickered to the screens, his concentration breaking as he tried to reconcile the footage with his own reality. Outside, the police cordoned off the street, a meticulous line of officers with rifles trained on the bus. The authorities managed to coax most of the passengers to a safe distance, their faces pale and eyes glazed. Only Jack and Annie remained, trapped, The door jammed shut by the damaged fuel tank and the twisting metal of the bus's front grille. With a bruised hand, Jack twisted the bus's interior panel, using it as a makeshift lever. Together they forced the floor to give, sliding onto the cracked asphalt just as the bus lurched forward, its rear wheels tearing away from the road. The bus, now a half-collapsed shell, charged toward a parked freight plane. The impact ignited the remaining fuel, a massive fireball erupting in a cathedral of orange light. Explosions ripped through the aircraft's cargo hold, sending debris spiraling into the sky. Jack and Annie stumbled backward, shielding each other from the shockwave. When the roar faded, they were still standing, their lungs burning with dust, their hearts beating a frantic rhythm of survival. Paramedics swarmed them, applying pressure to wounds and wrapping them in blankets. Mac arrived minutes later, his face etched with a mixture of exhaustion and relief. "You two made it," he said, his voice soft, almost reverent. The ambulance doors slammed shut, and the vehicle surged into the night, lights flashing like strobe beacons. Howard Payne's phone rang again, the same sardonic voice crackling through the line. "You think I don't know the bus is a husk now? I didn't blow it up. You've got me fooled." He sneered, "I'll be waiting for my money." The line clicked dead. Within 30 minutes, a convoy of unmarked vehicles rolled to a discreet spot near the city's waste processing plant. Inside a rusted dumpster, a bag of cash lay waiting, its weight promising a brief respite for the detectives who had chased Payne across a cityscape of fear. The officers, hidden like shadows behind concrete pillars, laid a paint-filled bomb as a decoy. Sanitation workers, unaware of the trap, lifted the bag and tossed it into a trash bin destined for incineration. Payne, still watching the looping footage on his screen, took a desperate gamble. He slipped into the bus's remains, intending to trigger a final explosion that would erase any trace of the money. He'd miscalculated. The looped broadcast, now playing on a news channel in the precinct, had made him believe the bus was still intact. Confused, he muttered, "I'm a cop now," and tried to seize Annie by force, dragging her towards the back of the wreckage. Jack, following a faint trail of ash, discovered a small opening beneath the dumpster, a hole large enough for a hand to slip through. He squeezed his way in, his breath ragged, lungfuls of stale air mixing with the scent of burnt rubber. He emerged into a dim underground tunnel, where the echo of dripping water resonated against exposed concrete. Annie was crouched against a steel pipe, a battered bag of cash spilling coins onto the ground like a cascade of metal rain. "Put the money back!" Payne hissed, his eyes wild. He gestured to the bag, his voice a low growl. "You've got one chance, or I'll make this place a mausoleum for you both." Jack's mind raced. He recalled the paint bomb they had hidden earlier, the thick orange slurry that would foam on contact with fire. He slipped his hand into the bag, feeling the cold metal of the coins, the weight of an entire operation balanced on his palm. "Take the cash, lever," Jack said, his tone flat, his eyes locked on Payne's glinting firearm. Payne smirked. "Bombs are made to explode, kid. You'll see that soon." He shoved the bag into his coat and stalked toward an old subway carriage that loomed in the tunnel's darkness. The subway car, abandoned and rusted, groaned as Payne forced the doors open. Inside, the walls were lined with packages of homemade explosives, each a ticking promise of chaos. A lone driver sat at the controls, unaware of the intrusion. Payne raised his weapon, his fingers trembling with anticipation. Jack lunged, grabbing the driver's arm and yanking him into the corridor. The sudden movement caused Payne's weapon to bark, two deafening shots that rang out in the cramped space. The driver's body slumped, a lifeless heap on the floor. An explosion ripped through the car's interior as a bomb inside detonated from the shock of the gunfire. Smoke choked the tunnel, orange flames licking the low ceiling. Amid the chaos, Annie clutched the bag, tears streaming down her soot-streaked face. "Jack, look!" she shouted, pointing to a paint bomb, its bright orange capsule hidden in the bag of cash. Payne's eyes widened as he realized the trap. He fumbled with the device, his hands slick with blood, and threw it toward the nearest vent. The paint bomb exploded in a burst of thick, viscous orange, coating the tunnel walls in a sticky film of foam. Jack seized the moment, sprinting toward the train's roof. The metal was hot under his boots, the rails humming with the residual energy of the explosion. He clambered onto a railing, his breath ragged, and faced Payne in close quarters. The two men grappled, their bodies slamming against the cold steel. Payne's head struck a signal post, the force snapping his skull and sending him tumbling over the edge of the carriage. He fell onto the tracks below, disappearing into darkness. From his perch, Jack heard Mac's voice crackle through a handheld radio. "The track ahead isn't finished. You can't stop the train." The words echoed in the hollow tunnel, a stark reminder of the impossibility of their situation. With the carriage still moving, the only option was to jump. Jack hurled himself into the void, feeling the wind rush past his face as he descended onto the concrete platform below. He scraped his knees, cursed, and scrambled to his feet. The train screeched as it entered a section under construction, its wheels grinding against unfinished rails. The carriage shook violently, sending passengers jostled against one another. Annie was bound to a metal pole, her wrists cuffed tightly. Jack lunged forward, his fingers brushing the chain as he tried to pry it open. The metal resisted, the bolts rusted and fused from the heat of the earlier explosion. He cursed, slamming his knee against the pole, the impact reverberating through his bones. In a desperate move, he bolted the train forward, using its momentum as a shield against the crumbling carriage. The train entered a sweeping curve, the rails giving way under the strain. The front of the carriage split, the metal tearing apart like a shredded banner. The section containing Jack and Annie hurled off the track, spiraling through the air before crashing onto an abandoned construction site, the dust cloud rising like a phantom shroud. Silence settled over the wreckage, broken only by the ragged breaths of the two survivors. They lay amid twisted steel and broken glass, the night sky above them speckled with distant stars. Jack reached out, his hand finding Annie's trembling fingers. Their eyes met, a silent acknowledgement of the ordeal they had endured together. A siren wailed in the distance, growing louder as emergency crews converged on the scene. Lights flashed, painting the wreckage in alternating reds and blues. Officers approached, their faces a mix of shock and relief as they took in the sight of the two alive amid the carnage. The bag of cash lay half buried in the dust, the orange paint still clinging to the metal, a vivid reminder of the narrow line between victory and defeat. "Let's get you both checked out," one of the medics said, gently lifting Jack to his feet. He glanced at the remnants of Payne's operation, a graffiti-scrawled note on a wall reading "Wildcat." He wondered how many more lives the man would have taken if not for the thin thread of chance that had led Jack to the underground tunnel. Jack and Annie exchanged a small, weary smile. The world around them swirled with flashing lights, the distant hum of the city's night, and the faint echo of an explosion that had once threatened to consume everything. Yet there was a quiet certainty in the space between them. They had survived, not because they were invincible, but because they had refused to give in to fear. The ambulance doors closed, the engine roared to life, and the vehicle pulled away, disappearing into the night. As the first light of dawn began to wash over the horizon, the city breathed a collective sigh of relief, unaware that beneath its streets, a shadowy figure still slunk among the debris, clutching a sack of cash and a cold smile. Howard Payne, bruised but not broken, emerged from the tunnel's darkness, his coat stained with orange paint. He stared at the rising sun, a twisted grin forming on his lips. "Next time," he whispered to the empty air, "they'll never see me coming." He slipped back into the maze of alleys, disappearing like smoke through a cracked window, leaving behind only the echo of his promises and the lingering scent of burnt gasoline. Jack's thoughts lingered on the torn pages of a notebook he had found under the debris. A scribbled list of locations, names, and dates, a map of every future attack Payne had planned. He tucked it into his pocket, his resolve hardening. The battle might be over for now, but the war against the ghosts that haunted the city's underbelly was just beginning. And so the bus, the plane, the train, each a stage for a story of terror and tenacity, fell silent, their metal skeletons a testament to the thin line between destruction and rescue. Jack and Annie, bruised but alive, clung to each other as the world turned, their hearts beating in unison, ready for whatever came next.